I was asked to do an Abbey creek or an Abbey stemmed point. Seems pretty straightforward, so I'm going to try it. Now, when I looked up the dimensions, it says they average about 2 inches long. So let's see. Although they can be up to 80 millimeter, which is 3 inches long. So yeah, this is seems like a good piece of Georgia chert. I think it's a Georgia butterscotch. I think it's heat treated. So here we go. Let's see what else is on my list. Someone wants me to do a Sabinol. Let's see what else. How to sharpen the stone blades. Yeah, I think I'll do a sharpening video very soon. I need to do at least 4 different types of sharpening videos. I think I won't put them all in one video. I'll show each type of sharpening in separate videos. Yeah. And there's a bunch of other stuff I got on my list. Yeah, I've been working on paleo types. I still have not received notification that they've sent my casts yet from Lithic Casting Lab. I got a receipt, but they have not charged my account and they have not sent anything yet. I got a feeling it might take a while before I can start working on those Cody points, because I want to have the casts available. This has got a crack right there. That's not good. So yeah, I want to make sure I have the casts available before I start that series. Well, that's not going to work. That was a deep crack. I wonder if I could do it from this piece. I don't know if it's long enough, but I don't know if it's wide enough. For some reason, these points need to be very wide. And that's one thing I don't have is wide pieces that are easy to knap. You might say, well, if it's not easy, that's a good video. Yeah. It's good until it breaks. Like this one. This was working out well until it broke. Ooh, that's got a big hole in it. These are my biggest pieces, so I don't have many pieces. I don't have many pieces for you measly Mises. That might work. Although this has inclusions in it. Yeah, and I'm quickly going through and using up all my larger flakes and spalls for the paleo stuff I'm working on. So I'm going to have even less to do anything large or anything wide in the upcoming weeks. And I decided to start working on paleo again because I lost my my mindset for them. I realize that working on them lately, I've just completely lost my mindset. That's not good, because I want to be able to keep up with it. Yeah, my mindset right now is archaic. I'm tuned into doing the archaic stuff and the late prehistoric. What am I looking for? Tape measure. Yeah, okay. So it's just long enough. And like I said, on these points, it's important to be wide for some reason. Yeah. I'm going to be very careful about the width, which is right up my alley, because that's what I try to do anyway. How many points in the archaeological record are concerned with lots of width? There's a simple answer to that, and that is all of the knives, all of them, are concerned. The knappers of knives are concerned with width on all of the knives. Yeah. Because the object of a knife is to be able to be resharpened. Otherwise, you can just use a flake. The flakes can only be resharpened so much before they become too small to be used. So they knap larger blades that can be resharpened multiple times. So you don't have to keep looking for flakes. And you don't have to keep rehafting flakes. Because yeah, it's much easier to use a flake if it's hafted, even if it's hafted crudely. This looks like this inclusion is going to prevent me from, well, I don't know. I'm thinking it's going to prevent me from making one of these. It's still, they're not that large. I just need to make sure it's wide enough. I got to take this out completely. See that? Yeah. So anyone tells you that preserving width is not important, they're ignoring the knives. So don't ignore the knives. Yeah. It's an extremely essential part of the archaeological record. Not just projectile points. Yeah. And some stuff that they call projectile points are actually knives. Because when they came up with the terminology projectile point, they weren't thinking clearly. I don't know what it is. Smart people have a tendency to act weird. So what am I doing? I'm trying to establish the dimensions. There's still some of that. Why do I want to get rid of this crumbly stuff or this bad spot? Because it cannot be sharpened. And as you will see later, I'm going to put a bevel on it, and I can't pressure flake through that. That's just a bunch of what feels like limestone. And you can't sharpen that up. I think I got most of it. Alright, so am I left with something I can use? I think so. Yeah. I think I can use it and stay within the parameters. Yeah. Okay. Usually I don't care about the parameters unless someone asks me to do a reproduction. Now, were these heat treated back in the day? That I don't know. It didn't say in the description I looked up. It didn't say if these were heat treated or not. But if they're not, oh well. I prefer to work with heat treats. But just so you know, I don't know. I don't know if they're heat treated in the archaeological record. And yes, the Indians, they knew about heat treatment. Some people are still amazed, or they don't know about heat treating. And they say stuff like, really? The Indians knew about heat treatment? How long did they know about it? And when? Who did it? And on what rocks? And for what temperatures? And exactly what was the methods? And blah, blah, blah. The answer to that is whatever worked. Yeah, there's various ways you can heat treat. Whatever works. There's various rocks you can use. Whatever works. What methods did they use to knap the stuff that's not heat treated? Whatever works. Yeah. We don't know exactly, except that they did whatever worked. That we do know, because it's obvious. And something I was thinking about the other day is, did they always have perfect tool tips when they were working their knapping? When they were doing their knappings, did they always have perfect tool tips? Are we able to tell the difference between knappings with quality tools and knappings with non-quality tools? And can some knappers knap beautiful points with cruddy tools? And can some bad knappers knap well with good tool tips? And does it matter to how they were made? Yeah, it matters to how they were made, if they were made with good quality tool tips or bad quality tool tips, and the skill of the napper. Yeah. And the flake scars. It affects the flake scars. The bad quality tool tip will affect the flake scars. So what, if you make a little cruddy flake with an indirect percussion tool, it looks like a really good, careful flake from a bopper. So which one was it that they used? The reason why I say it looks like a good flake from a bopper, because you got to be very accurate to produce flakes like this with a bopper. You just can't smack it. It's got to be accurate, but you can just kind of haphazardly do it with the indirect percussion, and it produces a reasonably good quality flake. So which one did they use in the past? We don't know. And anyone who says they know or have an idea, they're not playing with the full deck. We can only experiment and come up with different ways. And one of those ways might be it. We don't know. And there's at least 2 different ways to make the same exact flake. So the best you can hope for is a 50-50 chance of being correct. That's the best. And most of the time, your guess is going to be remotely accurate. It'll be generally accurate, but to know the exact circumstances behind how they were made is not going to be correct, no matter what you do. Unless you're lucky. And luck is a whole separate ballgame. It has nothing to do with your knowledge. All right. I just want to make sure I clarify that every now and then, because the opposite is talked about on the internet, on the interwebs. Yeah. The interwebs are an excellent place for false realities. That's the one drawback. You would think that it would be an excellent place for truth and debunking of fallacies, but it is just the opposite. When I first saw the internet, I said, hey, we can post the truth and post debunkings. And we can show with evidence that people are not correct or are correct. But you know what the internet has been used for? Creating alternate realities. Yeah. That's what it's been used for. Unfortunately, that's what people like to see. They like to see alternate realities. Yeah. Because it's usually more entertaining than reality. And some people just, they don't want to live in a world where blah 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 happens, so they want to hear the alternate reality. They just can't stand living in a world where, for instance, where overshots are bad. So they must live in an alternate reality. They can't stand the thought, and they don't want to live in the world where overshots are bad. Nope. Just can't do it. So there you go. I gotta be careful here because it says in my description that these things are flattened. Flat. So I can't have like a tall rise in the middle. So I gotta do this kind of stuff. I've got to send big flakes across trying to flatten the surface. So once I flatten this side, I'll try to flatten the other side as best I can. The best I can. Yeah. And flattening flakes require a lot of practice to accomplish. So these guys were obviously making a lot of these back in the day because it requires a lot of practice to create a flat, relatively flat surface without step fracturing it to death. Yeah. And a lot of times these stems were thinned, so I can't leave it all bulky. Can't do it. I can't take the easy way out and leave it all bulky. So this is pretty flat on this side. Now I just got to get rid of the bump here. Down here doesn't need to be altered very much down here to be relatively flat. I'll just send in some flakes from the corners in here. But this is going to be a problem because I can't take too much off the width up here. And these have got like jet plane wings where they're clipped. All right, these barbs are clipped off. They're not pointy. They become pointy with resharpening though. So I'm going to do some resharpening and beveling on this. So they'll probably be pointy after I do that. But upwardly pointy, not downwardly pointy, if that makes sense. Okay. So this is part of the flattening to do this thinning from the base. Now, all you guys who are anticipating the sharpening videos to sharpen the edges of stone, if you haven't picked up your diamond file set, go ahead and do that because I'll be using the diamond files a lot in the sharpening videos. Yeah. Because for new guys, you're going to need it. It's much easier to use a file than anything else. Why do I go with easy? So you can focus on your skill and not focus on nothing but damage control. Yeah. You might say, well, I want a skill in damage control. I want it. That's what I want. No, when you're first starting, you don't want to be working on damage control. You want to be working on the basics on how to produce flakes without step fracturing. Just produce them without the damage to begin with. Yeah. It's so much easier to nap if you avoid the problems while napping. And if you can learn that early, it's good. Learn at the same time you're learning, practice the avoidance of step fracturing. That'll get you further along than if you just haphazardly go at it and just do it. You know what I mean? You'll get there either way. You'll get there if you haphazardly do it and just do it. And you'll get there also if you start to develop good habits to avoid problems. You'll get there either way, but I like the try to avoid problems approach. And one thing is, don't start your napping career trying to make flat points like this, because this is even hard for people with experience. Don't be starting your napping experience with points that are difficult for people that have experience, like paleos and certain other types that have difficult cross sections. So a new guy should not be doing diamond cross sections. A new guy should not be doing flattened cross sections. A new guy should not be doing big broad flakes or fluting, like Clovis fluting or anything like that. You should be turning your almonds into pumpkin seeds. If you look at the cross sections, and you should be doing 4:1 with the thickness ratio or thereabouts on your finished points. Yeah. And then after you get 4:1 down with no step fracturing, you can go to 5:1 with the thickness ratios. That step from 4:1 down to 5:1 is a big step. And it's also a big step to go from 5:1 to 6:1. Okay? Those are big advancements. Unless you're lucky. And some days you're going to be, I did it really well. I got down to 6:1. I've only been napping 3 months, but I can't do it anymore. Yes, because you were lucky. Yeah. So, just keep that in mind. I wish someone would have told me that in the beginning. Even though I probably would not like hearing it. I would say, I'm going to do it the way I want to do it. I want to nap the way I want. I want to start out with paleo. I want to start out with flat points. I want to start out with big bold flakes. I want to start out with everything that's difficult. That's what I want to start with. Yeah, you can do it that way. And if you have a high tolerance for disappointment, then I'd suggest, yeah, go for it. If you have a high tolerance for disappointment, then go for it. Most people do not have a high tolerance for disappointment. They get all ticked. Then they start asking me weird questions. What exactly is the angle? I want to know exactly, because for some reason I can't get it exactly. It seems like if I know exactly, then I can do it. Well, I can't tell you exactly. It's up to the, I mean, it's between you and your stone. I can give you the basic guidelines, but it's up to, it's between you and your particular piece of stone. Everything is a little bit different, and the subtle differences can make all the difference in napping. Okay. I know it's already on mute. A lot of guys have already muted it. So now, when they got it on mute, we can talk about sneaky stuff behind their backs. Yeah. What do we talk about that's sneaky? That they will not hear because they already muted me. No, just about anything. Cool stuff. We can talk about cool stuff. Like, where did I get this rock from? I got it from Jeff Head, one of the best rock sellers out there. Okay, and you just email me if you don't already know. Okay. If you have any questions on any of the books I use or where I get the references from, you can ask. I looked up this point on projectilepoints.net. You just type in Abbey Creek projectile point, and it'll bring you to the projectilepoint.net website. And there you can look up all kinds of stuff. It's got an enormous database of not only points, but materials that the points are made from. Yeah. So it's getting pretty flat. See that? Flattened. And that's useful when beveling. Oh yes. Now I've looked at pictures of these. They're not perfectly made as far as the step fracturing goes. I saw a lot of step fracturing on the actual artifacts. So I'm not too worried about that. I'm not too worried about perfection on these. Some points, yeah. Some points have a high level of perfection, but not these. Luckily. And luckily these have a random flake pattern. Yep. So what is the technique for flattening? Is there a technique? No. It's just a matter of trying to get wide flakes. And the flatter it gets, the wider they get. So as long as you don't break it in half, the flattening actually becomes a little bit easier as you go along. If you can manage to avoid the step fracturing. Yeah, it's a big if. But if you can do that, the flattening becomes easier as you go along. Because as it gets flatter and flatter, the flakes become wider and wider, and it remains flat. Yeah. If you do it right. If you don't do it right, you just gotta practice. Okay. Now what am I doing now? I'm looking for ways to make it even flatter. And I'm trying to remember what it said in the book. You know, I'd like to get rid of those step fractures in there. Clean it up a little bit. But I think I'm going to have to fix this area right here so I can do it. And send one in right there. Yeah. That looks like a juicy spot right there. Let's see. Nope, it's not abraded enough. And I put an angle on the abrading like this. It's about a 60 degree angle. Ooh, that one was scary. I felt like I snapped the whole thing. Yeah. I think it dived in a little bit right there. So that's it. That's the limit of what I want to do as far as thinning on this one. Because these things tend to dive. These flakes on heat treat. Yeah, that's good enough. So now I'm just going to finish up with pressure. Okay, so what is the ratio? Let's do it in millimeter as always. Let's just call it 50, just so it can be an even number, because 49 is a bummer number. And it's a 5. 10 to 1. Okay, 5 millimeter by 50 millimeter, 10 to 1. Now, if you're new and you're going for this, yeah, I mean, knock yourself out and go for it. But if you want success, try not to go for that thin. Just go for 5 to 1. Or, you know, twice as thick as this. And then you can advance further down. So it'll save you a lot of headache, even though it may take a lot of patience and a lot of self-control. Try not to do too much. I made that mistake in the beginning. I tried to do way too much. Let me see if I can remember how this looked like. I don't think these were downward pointing. I think these were upward. Yeah, these are upward pointing barbs. I gotta remove some of that. All right. My goal when I first started was to make hunting points, but in the Native American style. You know, small hunting points. Stuff that was only 1.5 inches long by maybe 5/8 wide and 40 grains or less in weight. That was what I wanted to do. So that I achieved that goal fairly early, because I could just pressure flake flakes into that kind of a point. But people started asking me, how do I do that? How do you flint knap? Can you show me? Because apparently everyone else is too busy. Or they get annoyed by newbie questions or something. So I said, yeah, I'll show you, but it's easier for me to do a video because one-on-one interactions are difficult for me. Yeah. And sometimes you don't listen to me when it's one-on-one. I found out. Yeah. Because it's not like I'm going to knock you upside the head if you don't do it the way I tell you. There's no intimidation there. I'm not intimidating. So I'll show people how to do something. They'll do it their own way, usually. And until they fail at doing it their own way, then they go, okay, I'll do it the way he said. I find that difficult to tolerate. So I'm kind of like, I'd rather make videos. That way I can pretend you're being cooperative. You're so cooperative and so agreeable. Yeah. Right? Right. See? Much easier. And I can focus on the actual napping instead of trying to figure out how to interact with various personalities. Some people think I'm going to tell jokes the whole time when I'm napping. And they discover that I just put my nose to grindstone and I don't say nothing. At a nap-in, usually. And then I don't start saying anything until after everyone's finished napping and they break out the brewskis and fire up the barbecue grills and start shooting the breeze. Yeah. Some nappers are much more entertaining than I am. At the nap-ins that I go to. Oh yes. believe it or not, when I'm in a crowd, I cannot relax that easily unless I get into a zone. So I get into my zone. It's fun to watch other nappers though in person. Yeah, I think it's more fun than watching a video. Me personally, I just wish I was more entertaining. Yeah. I don't know if I'd watch myself. If I went to a nap-in, would I watch myself? I don't know. I don't even watch my own videos very much, other than to review them. Once in a while, I'll see. I used to in the beginning. I used to watch my own videos so I can actually see what's going on. Because when you're doing the napping, it looks different than when you're observing the napping. Believe it or not, it feels and looks different. So, what I think I'm doing when I'm napping looks slightly different when I'm not, when I'm watching it. So I learned a lot of things actually by watching myself nap, because I didn't see, or I didn't realize I was doing certain things. I mean, they're obvious now that I've got more experience, but in the beginning, it's difficult for me to see. Okay. Is that stem long enough? I don't think that stem is long enough. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take back these barbs a little bit more. So I can remove some more off the bottom. See, I just increased the distance a little bit here and here, and I'm taking some more off of this so that I can lengthen the stem. But at the same time, I got to keep these thin, these barbs thin. Yeah. Step fractures. Okay, let's see. Now you might say, well, if you're paying attention to my other videos, you might say, I thought you said that it's best to have a thick point when you do beveling. I thought that was it. Now you're doing a thin point for beveling? What's up? I'm doing a thin point for beveling this time because it was the easiest way for me to flatten this. Now, I probably should have kept it thicker and started with a much bigger piece. That way I can flatten it in a thicker state, because it requires a lot of edge removal to generate these long flakes. So it just ended up being thin because of the mechanics of the whole process. Yeah, beveling shows up a lot better if it's a thick piece. Now, if you don't care about how much it shows up, then you don't need to worry. Because if it doesn't show up very much, you're not going to care. Yeah, it's not going to show all that much on this particular piece, but it will be beveled. Come on. Now, which way was I going to shoot flakes in? I think I already... No, I need to go in this way. This way might work too. I wanted to get rid of some of those step fractures in there, but it might be risky because that patch looks a little bit non-nappable. So even if I run a flake all the way through there, it might stop right in the middle, and I just end up with another step fracture. Yeah. All right. So on the beveling, let's see if I can remember. I think it was on the right side. On the ones that I saw. When you hold it like this, you can see the beveling on the right side. But I think I saw it on all sides also. Oh, let's see. So the first step to beveling is making sure it's dull. I'm going to lengthen that stem a little bit too. But anyway, yeah, the first step in beveling is make sure it's dull. Very dull. And you pick a side. Yep, you got to pick sides in beveling. Yep. Pick a side early. Pick your battle early. Now some people, they don't know how to do this part, but it's mostly just set it on the edge, or I should say just above the edge, and it's got to be well ground because you want to set it on that rounded area on the surface. This is the surface of the workpiece. The surface goes a little bit downward. I consider the surface to be not only the top here, but a little bit downward to a tangent of 60 degrees. So you put the flaker on that tangent, on that rounded area. There's a tangent at 60 degrees. You put your flaker right where you imagine that tangent to be. And this angle here varies according to the stone. Some stones you gotta push inward a lot. Some stones you can't because it'll step fracture right away, so you gotta go downward more. It depends on your stone. Now heat treat is forgiving, so you get a slight range of angles that will work. But other stones, it's got to be just right. And you'll get used to it over time. But again, put it on the surface at that tangent of 60 degrees. That's where you put the tip of the flaker. It's not on the exact edge. It's a little bit up off the edge. Sometimes you have to consciously put it further up on the edge, because if you don't, it'll crush too much. And if it crushes too much, the first option is to grind more. Yeah. So your first option is not to put it up higher. It's to grind it a little bit more. And then if it doesn't work, then you put your flaker up a little higher. And by not working, I mean if it's crushing a lot or something else is happening, like step fracturing near the edge. If it's all of the above, you've got to try more grinding. Yeah. If you find that you've ground it down too much, at least you know the limits. It's always good to know the limits of anything. So you know that, okay, I cannot grind it that much, so it's going to be something else. Something else is not working. It's crushing. I ground it a lot, and now I'm not able to flake anything. So, and I'm still getting I am still not getting what I want. So let's try to change the diameter of the tool tip. Maybe it needs to be more pointy. Maybe it needs to be fatter. Start working with the variables. Maybe I just need to get better stone. Maybe I need to change the angle and go more inward with pressure or more downward. Maybe I need to switch over to a spatula tool to do the edge work. just start experimenting. Now, for the second pass, I find it easy to, or easier to just do this and knock off all the parts sticking out, and then grind it. This gives you a little bit more control over how much you remove, because if it's sticking out and you use an abrader to grind it down, sometimes it removes too much. It'll actually remove like a big flake, and you don't want that. You don't want that to happen haphazardly, because beveling is a bit persnickety. Yeah, it's a style that is a bit persnickety. Yeah, the more you get detailed about it, the better it works. So right now I'm just making sure that it's going to be straight. Beveling needs to be straight in order to facilitate the beveling. To facilitate further beveling on the edge. It needs to be as straight as you can get it on, and flat as you can get it on the non-beveled side. Okay? On the beveled side, it can be all wonky and bumpy, but on the non-beveled side, it needs to be pretty flat. That way you're going to get a nice sharp edge. Now I go 90 degrees when I'm doing this, but it actually, when you're actually in there, it's pretty much rounded, because it rounds to a point, and then when you grind off that point, it goes like that, but it still feels rounded instead of flat. You still got that tangent at 60 up on top. It's not going to be on the flat spot that you just filed into the edge. And if you can't do it the way I'm describing, you've got to figure out another way to do it. Yeah. Or just keep going until you get different results. Yeah, just keep going and expect different results. After a while, you'll get different results. Usually. If you don't, then yeah, switch it up to something else. Don't keep doing the same thing. You got to make a little bit of a decision there. Should I keep going and keep doing it even though I'm not getting results, or do I change it up? That's something that's very difficult to decide properly. You can decide it easily, but whether you decided too early or too late is hard to tell. Alright, so now it's to the point where this is flat enough on this side. I don't have to do damage control and try to eliminate lumps. I'll just finish the beveling by picking off the dull spots. I might do another pass, but it depends on how it looks. If it looks good enough, I'm just going to leave it. And I'll go more into beveling with the beginner series. Yeah, like I said before, the beginner series is actually the most difficult type of video to do. now that I know a lot of the variables that go into the knapping, because you not only need to know what a good edge looks like before you start, you need to know what a bad edge is as well. What's a good spot? What's a bad spot? What's a good spot? Is that good or is that bad? How bad is it? How good is it? You have to know how bad the edge is as well as how good it is. Ooh, I'm at 5% battery. Oh yeah, because I can't keep this thing plugged in 100-degree weather. So I'm gonna wrap this up. My phone almost died. In case you didn't know. In case you didn't know what I was talking about just then. So yeah, I would just keep doing the flaking favoring one side. Can you see it? You can see I'm favoring this side here more than that one, although there's little flakes here on this side. They're not as pronounced, and eventually you'll get this side moving upward and this side moving downward. In this case, you'll get a little bit of a twist at the tip. But yeah, I need to wrap this up because my phone is going to overheat here in a minute. I don't want to make that too narrow. I saw some pretty wide stems on this type in the pictures that I saw. And I like nice pop outs at the bottom of these notches, so let's do that. Let's make sure I get good pop outs and not crushings. You don't want to finish off the bottom of these notches or the bottom of these whatever with crushings. They need to be nice pop outs. Yeah, like that. And these are not symmetrical. As a point style, they didn't care about symmetry on these. Yeah, so as you progress, these start to point upward as far as the barbs look, because they didn't sharpen all the way down. They just sharpened from the point here up. So it kind of scooped it out right here. They didn't touch the width. They just sharpened this part. So it tells me it was a knife. They kept it wide, maybe so that your finger would bump up against these. You wouldn't go up over the top and cut yourself on the upper part. Maybe they dulled this back here a little bit. I don't know. For some reason, they wanted to keep them wide, and I'm just guessing as to why. Why the wide? But you can see the. Let's see. Can you see? There's a series of flakes here, but not so much on the other side. So it looks like you favored. On these points, it'll favor one side with a bunch of little flakes. There is some cleanup on that side, but there's more of a series of flakes on this side. Hopefully, it's visible. It gets more visible the more you knap. You know, that series of flakes to bevel it gets more and more visible. And you get more and more of a twist. But the thicker it is, also the better those bevels show up. So yeah, that's it. Let's see. Maybe you can see better. Yeah, so that's the Abbey Creek. It'll be available in the auction. Yeah. Okay, there you go.